Yeah, hi, this is Ashwin and I'm a Microsoft Azure MVP. And in this particular video, we talk about Microsoft Sentinel. So let's get started. We start by talking about cyber kill chain. Then we move on to MITRE attack metrics. Then we talk about Microsoft Sentinel and its components like connectors, workbook, incident, playbook, and we talk about hunting at the end. So let's try to understand a cyber security attack. So let's take a look at cyber kill chain. These are basically a series of steps that can be used to trace the stage of a cyber security attack. Now the first one is reconnaissance. This is basically an observatory stage wherein the attacker is trying to assess your network and services and identify a possible target and techniques to gain an entry into your organization. The second step is intrusion. The attacker is going to use the knowledge that is gained in the reconnaissance phase to get access to your network. This could be possible by exploring a flaw in the network or maybe a security vulnerability. The next stage is exploitation. This particular stage involves exploiting the earlier found vulnerabilities and basically inserting certain malicious code into your system to gain further access. And then it moves to the next stage, that is privilege escalation. The attackers often try to gain administrative access on the compromised system so they can get access to more critical data and basically try to move to the connected system. And that leads to the next stage, that is lateral movement. This is the act of moving laterally to a connected server and gain greater access to a potential data. Now the next phase is basically obfuscation or doing any anti-forensic activities on that particular system. Basically, to successfully pull off a cybersecurity attack, the attacker needs to cover their entries. They will basically compromise your data or maybe clear the audit logs to try to prevent detection by the security team. Now coming to the next stage, once they have got into the network, is basically trying to disrupt the normal access of the users and system so that they can gain better access, or they will be able to see that system for a longer period of time, and that's basically called denial of service. Once that is done, the final stage is exfiltration. That is basically to get the valuable data out of that compromised system. Now, there are different types of attacks, and it's not necessary that every attack goes through all of these stages. So you can basically look at target possible options based on how the behavior of that attacker is, and then accordingly you can plan your security systems. And most of the Microsoft security solutions are basically designed around this particular kill chain. So let's get into more detailed metrics, and that's what we're going to cover in the next one. MITRE attack metrics. This particular metrics helps you to categorize an attack into multiple tactics and techniques. You can see on the top that it starts with reconnaissance tactic. Once that is done, they develop the resource required, then they're trying to get initial access, execute certain things, then trying to be persistent on the network, and then they try to escalate their privileges, and then they try to ensure that they are not detected by the defense systems that you have. Then once you have access to certain credentials, it tries to discover which are the networks that are available to you next to that compromised system. Then it tries to do a lateral movement. Once it is on the right system, it collects the required data, then it talks to the command and control server, and then exfiltrate the information that it wants to send. And at the end, it can create certain impact to your network. Now, attack metrics is pretty much valuable to a variety of everyday settings. Any defense activity that the reference attacker and the behavior can benefit from the attacking taxonomy that we are actually going to discuss here. Basically, when you're documenting an attack, you could essentially use these tactic and technique to identify the different stages of the attack. It can be used for mapping the different defensive control so that you have better understanding on what is covered and what needs to be worked upon. And Microsoft Sentinel is designed to tag all the attack incidents with an appropriate MITRE attack tactics and techniques. So now you have an understanding of how an attack happens. Let's take a look at Microsoft Sentinel. Microsoft Sentinel is an SIEM and NSOAR platform. That means it is a security information event management system as well as security orchestration automation response system. Now, the functionality of Sentinel can be better explained in 4 parts. First, it helps you to collect the data, and it can be data from your server, devices, application, and infrastructure. Once it has collected the data, basically the logs from these servers, it will be able to detect any threats and basically help you to minimize any false positives by using AI into the alerting options. Once it is able to detect, you can investigate the threats by using AI, and even you can hunt for any suspicious activity in that particular data that is collected. And then you can respond to the incidents by creating any orchestration or automation for most of the common tasks. So let's take a look at the data connections. Now, there are different types of data connections or the connectors which can basically hook on to the data that you have collected in the system. There are service to service integration, which means it can talk to AWS or Azure AD or Office 365 components. Basically, you're configuring that particular connector with the required permissions to collect the data. Or else you can use certain API to collect the data. Basically, if you have any systems which are exposed via an API, those data can be onboarded to Sentinel by connecting to the required API endpoints. And the third option is basically collecting a real-time log, basically by using an agent or by using a collector. Now, we will have further videos that is coming up in the upcoming sessions wherein we discuss in detail about data connection. So stay tuned with the channel and we will let you know as soon as we get you an update. Now, coming to the way you can work with these incidents or work with the data, there is an option called workbook. It's basically more like a dashboard that you can create with the data that is collected. So you can basically create workbooks which will analyze and correlate all the operations and events that is collected. It can help you to see certain information in a glance, like user operations or maybe a trend or any kind of anomalous changes that has happened accordingly on that network. The best part is, using this workbook, you can even drill down into the activities and even look at details in further. You can either use a lot of built-in workbooks or else create your own using custom workbook requirements. So let's take a look at how a data is collected and how an incident could be created out of that. So coming to the incidents in Microsoft Sentinel. Whenever Microsoft Sentinel finds a threat in the logs that are collected, it creates an alert. Now you have an option to either convert an alert into an incident or a group of alerts into an incident. There are many available built-in rule templates that is there for you to create it. Or else you could basically make sure that it is automatically creating incidents based on certain information that you have basically set up in your connected sources, like Active Directory information protection for this case. Now let's say, for example, you have certain incidents in your hand. Now you could basically do an automation to the response to that incident by creating playbook. Now these are basically a collection of certain procedures that you can do as a response to an alert or an incident. Now you can have basically different ways of creating playbooks, and there are about 200 plus connectors that are available within the Azure Logic app, which helps you to create a playbook much faster. Now, when you create a playbook, you can make sure that it is either triggered manually or it is set to run automatically whenever an alert is created or when an incident is created. To help you do threat hunting in a more efficient manner, Microsoft Sentinel comes with a lot of built-in hunting queries, which means when you deploy Microsoft Sentinel, you basically have hundreds of hunting queries available to you to use from the day one, which means a SOC analyst can essentially start hunting with the data that is collected right from the day one. And if they have actually better understood the hunting queries and KQL, you can basically perform custom queries, and to make it easier, it comes with IntelliSense. Once you have created a query, you can basically bookmark it for a later review. And if you want to integrate Jupyter Notebook or Python scripts, it is also possible. So now we have understood how an attack happens in the network using the cyber kill chain and MITRE attack metrics. Then we spoke about Microsoft Sentinel and its components, how the connectors are working, what are basically the workbooks, how are incidents created. We looked at playbooks and also talked about hunting. In the next video, we're going to be looking at doing a demo of Microsoft Sentinel. In that particular video, we're going to be creating a lab on Microsoft Sentinel by creating a log analytics workspace, onboarding Microsoft Sentinel. Then we start collecting a diagnostic logging from a particular web app. It can be any resource, just an example web app that we have selected. Then we can also connect the Azure activity to Sentinel and then view and query all of these collected data, basically play around with the data that is collected. So thank you very much for your time on this particular video. And if you want to learn further about Microsoft Sentinel, you can either look at the Microsoft site or else you can refer to my blog, that is blogs.ashwinpro.com. Or if you have any queries and you want to get connected with me, you can do so by using my LinkedIn URL. So let's see you in the next one. Thank you.